Welcome back to the deep dive. We sift through a ton of information, really, to bring you the core insights tailored for you. Today, we're diving into something, well, pretty extraordinary. A stack of sources detailing a clairvoyant's visions, his perspective on the near future. And just to be clear, our mission here, it isn't about belief, right? It's about understanding what this perspective predicts, the details, what insights maybe we can glean from such a, well, granular look at potential events. It's going to be fascinating. And get this, just to sort of paint a picture of the source, he has an artificial heart valve. And apparently, since 2016, it actually ticks like a clock. He even says his microphone picks it up sometimes during recordings. It's just such a, I don't know, humanizing detail, isn't it?
It really is. Makes him seem quite grounded, despite the subject matter.
Yeah. And recently, he was in Warsaw, recorded this long, like 4-hour chat with Katarzyna Nosowska, the Polish singer, talking about, quote, very strange things happening in the world.
And it links into how artists often tune into these broader anxieties, doesn't it? Which is kind of what we're doing here. We're extracting these, let's call them predictive nuggets, connecting them to maybe bigger themes, and encouraging you, listening, to think critically. You know how information like this, even prophetic stuff, can reflect underlying currents, anxieties, geopolitical shifts, cultural stuff.
Exactly. It's about understanding the narrative that's being presented.
Right. Not endorsing, not dismissing, just understanding, being better informed on this perspective.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The visions kick off with some pretty stark imagery for Poland. He describes seeing flags being lowered to half-mast across government buildings, administrative buildings. It's a very specific, very potent visual.
It is. And flags at half-mast, that immediately signals, well, mourning, a big deal, naturally. The scale he mentions, government and administrative buildings, that implies it's official, widespread, not just a local thing.
So who or what could trigger that kind of national response?
Well, historically, it's reserved for, huge national figures or major tragedies, something that cuts deep. Given the context of some other predictions we might get into, it could be a major figure passing, maybe unexpectedly, or some event. It raises questions, definitely. A heavy start.
Yeah, a really heavy opening. And building on that kind of national unease, he then talks about an affair with soldiers, leading to arrests of soldiers inside Poland. That sounds like, well, more than just an incident, an internal crisis.
That's particularly troubling, yeah. Because it hits at state security, national unity. Arresting your own soldiers suggests a serious internal problem. Corruption, maybe. Insubordination. Even worse. And for any country, but especially Poland, given its location, that damages trust. Trust in the military, trust in institutions. It could mean intense scrutiny, maybe shakeups, and it affects how allies see you too.
Right. Okay, shifting slightly, but still concerning. A new wave of a virus or flu this year. Feels very current, that worry. But he's specific. He says not a nationwide lockdown, more like localized outbreaks, foci in different cities, school closures here and there, some restrictions on public places, but contained, localized.
And that distinction is key, isn't it? Localized versus national. It suggests a different approach to managing health crises. Maybe learning from the past few years, more surgical perhaps, but potentially more complex to manage. Think about it deciding which schools close, which areas have restriction.
Yeah, that sounds like a logistical nightmare and potentially divisive.
Exactly. Communities might feel targeted or that burdens aren't shared equally. It points to public health policy becoming, well, much more granular and maybe more friction-filled for you living through it.
Good point. And then there's one vision he mentions that sounds particularly grim, a plague of cancers. He describes it as having sudden onset, rapid progression, getting worse in late autumn. And he says this vision came to him twice, which, underlines its persistence for him. It sounds deeply unsettling.
Yeah, the recurrence makes it stand out. And that kind of prediction, plague of cancers, taps into really deep fears, doesn't it? Especially now with all the background noise about health, environment, pandemics. It speaks to anxieties about unseen threats, things hitting fast, unexpectedly.
Your primal fears.
Exactly. And linking it to late autumn, well, that adds a kind of seasonal dread. When things get darker, colder, it hits the psychological nerve.
Okay, wow. So now, this is where it gets really interesting, as you said, the global stage. Russia, Ukraine. He details this vision of a plan, cooked up by, quote, Trump and America regarding Russia. And there's a deadline attached, December 15th, that's very specific. The idea is if Russia keeps going with the war, doesn't change its approach by then, the U.S. Trump's team meets with European politicians. He mentions maybe the Polish president or foreign minister.
Right, and the plan they supposedly discuss is this stabilization mission into Ukraine. But he emphasizes it's explicitly not a war. That phrasing is crucial.
Not a war, but a stabilization mission.
Yeah.
Against Russia's will.
Precisely. It sounds like an attempt to project power, maybe secure certain areas or outcomes, but without calling it a full-on war, a kind of limited intervention. And Russia's foreseen response, accumulating reserve troops.
Right.
But not necessarily for fighting Ukraine, more as a contingency against this mission. It's like a high-stakes standoff.
A very tense scenario. And surprisingly, he says Trump himself won't be part of this mission on the ground, but other countries will join. And Poland apparently agrees to participate.
Trump's absence is interesting. Maybe it's meant to make it look less like a personal Trump initiative, more multilateral.
Could be.
Poland agreeing, though, that's significant. It puts Poland right at the forefront again, a key player, but also right in the potential friction zone with Russia, even if it's just stabilization.
Yeah, definitely raises the stakes for Poland. And then, tied to this same mid-December timeframe, another really sensitive prediction, the possibility of Zelensky disappearing or ceasing to be active if Russia continues the war. That's huge.
That's perhaps the most politically explosive prediction here. Something like that were to happen. Well, the leadership vacuum, the uncertainty, the potential chaos in Ukraine. It's immense.
Yeah, absolutely destabilizing.
It changes the entire dynamic of the conflict. And it underscores the human element, the fragility of leadership in wartime. The clairvoyant apparently mentioned Trump had wanted more time for talks before, but this suggests maybe that window is seen as closing.
He also sort of briefly touches on another peace idea, a 3-stage buffer zone, which would apparently include the eastern half of Poland. He moves past it quickly. Maybe he thinks it's unlikely, but wow.
Yeah, even mentioning it is pretty radical, isn't it? A buffer zone involving part of Poland. It reminds you of historical carve-ups, zones of influence. Usually comes up in desperate times when people are looking for any way to stop fighting, even if it means redrawing maps drastically.
Right. Unsettling to even hear it floated.
Even if dismissed, it shows the kind of extreme thinking that might be happening behind the scenes, reflecting the sheer pressure of the situation.
Okay, so bringing it back home then. What does all this mean for Poland specifically? He sees autumn protests in several Polish cities, and they're specifically linked to Ukraine and Ukrainians.
And it's a sensitive nerve domestically, doesn't it? Poland's been incredibly supportive of Ukraine, but the sheer number of refugees, the economic pressures, it inevitably creates some tensions.
Yeah.
So protests linked to Ukrainians could reflect debates about resources, integration, jobs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a tough balancing act for the government. Maintain support for Kiev, but manage domestic concerns.
Yeah, a real tightrope. Then there's a very local but really alarming prediction. A residential or public building exploding, possibly near Wrocław, southwestern Poland. He calls it a local but powerful event, and maybe tied to extreme weather, like a big storm.
An exploding building.
Yeah.
That's instant trauma for a community. And speculation. In this kind of heightened atmosphere we're discussing, any sudden destructive event, well, can easily be misinterpreted, can it? Fuel fears.
Definitely.
And mentioning Wrocław specifically just makes it feel much more concrete, more real, especially for people in that region.
Okay, let's shift to the economy for a moment. He knows the current situation. The U.S. dollar is pretty low against the zloty, meaning the zloty is strong right now.
Right. But the vision he has is the dollar potentially starting to rise this autumn.
What does that signal?
Well, for investors, a rising dollar, especially against a regional currency like the zloty, often signals a flight to safety. If there's talk of stabilization missions, military action nearby, big money tends to get nervous. They might pull back, move into dollars.
Oh, okay.
So a rising dollar could mean cooling investor confidence in the region because of perceived risk. Poland's proximity to Ukraine is key here. It could signal economic headwinds.
Got it. And one more specific one. Closing 2 border crossings with Russia. Bezledy and another near Kaliningrad. That sounds tactical, like a specific incident.
Very specific. Closing border crossings like that isn't usually random. It signals a sharp downturn, a diplomatic spat, a security incident, maybe a direct response to something like that stabilization mission. It would have immediate effects, not just diplomatic, but economic too, for anyone involved in cross-border activity. Another sign of fragmentation.
Okay, this leads us into the leadership question in Poland. It gets complex. Remember, last year, he predicted an unknown person would become president, and that this person would eventually betray Poles, and he's now linking that directly to the current president, Karol Nawrocki, who was relatively unknown politically back then. He also brings up Trump meeting Nawrocki during the campaign.
Yeah, and the clairvoyant adds this layer, suggesting the meeting might have been a strategic play by Pai to kind of spite Tusk, who apparently offended Trump.
Wow.
It frames Nawrocki's position not just as winning an election, but maybe as part of a bigger political game, domestic politics getting tangled up with global figures, using meetings as tactical moves.
So it paints a picture of potentially calculated international maneuvering influencing Polish leadership.
It certainly suggests that interpretation, yeah. Very pragmatic, maybe even Machiavellian view of politics.
Which brings us to the really critical question from the vision. Will President Nawrocki show too much submissiveness to Trump? Especially with that other prediction hanging there, that Americans might push Poland into chaos and Europe wouldn't object, puts Poland's sovereignty under a microscope.
Absolutely. That taps into very old, very deep anxieties in Poland about external influence, about sovereignty. The idea of being pushed into chaos by an ally, with other allies standing by, that's a stark warning.
It is.
It puts enormous pressure on a leader like Nawrocki. How do you balance needing strong allies like the U.S. for security against maintaining independence and not becoming, well, a pawn?
A delicate balance.
Exactly. The vision really highlights the tough choices leaders face when big powers exert pressure and the potential consequences for the country.
And that leads perfectly into the clairvoyant's final point he emphasizes. The reason of state is most important because there is war in the world.
That phrase, reason of state, raison d'etat, it sums up the core tension, doesn't it? It means prioritizing national survival, security, strategic interests above everything else.
Yeah.
And in the kind of world he's predicting, internal strife, economic wobbles, interventions, war nearby that becomes the prime directive for leaders. Less idealism, maybe more cold calculation.
The sobering thought.
It is. It challenges everyone, leaders and citizens, to think about what really matters, what gets prioritized when threats seem real.
Well, that was quite a journey through these visions. Extraordinary range, really. National mourning, internal issues, huge geopolitical shifts, economic signals, health scares. We've tried to give you a shortcut, a way to grasp this unique and often unsettling perspective.
And just to reiterate as we close, our goal here was to unpack these ideas impartially, to help you understand the narrative, the potential implications, as presented in the source material. It's about staying open but critical when you encounter information like this, especially forecasts of major events. We're not here to say believe this or ignore this.
Right. Just understand what's being said.
Exactly. Helping you process it. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. If the future really is a tapestry woven with threads, like these predictions, some dark, some strategic, some personal, what does that mean for you? What kind of awareness or maybe even quiet preparations might you consider? Not out of fear, necessarily, but just from a deeper understanding of the forces that could be shaping our world. Something to ponder.